Do you know what your Monstera actually does every night while you sleep? You might assume it's just sitting there, resting, doing nothing like every other plant in your house. But once the lights go out, something changes. Your Monstera starts doing something you were never really meant to notice, something it only does in the dark. And if you've ever walked into your living room in the morning and seen tiny droplets hanging from the tips of its leaves, you've already seen it. You just didn't know what you were looking at. Most Monstera owners wipe those drops away without a second thought. But here's the truth, that isn't water, that isn't dew. That's your plant communicating with you in the only language it has. And if you've been ignoring it, you've been ignoring one of the most important signals your Monstera can send. Let's start with what's actually happening. One, those droplets on your Monstera's leaf tips are not condensation. Have you ever touched one and assumed it was just moisture from the air? Almost everyone does. You walk past, see the shine, maybe wipe it off with a finger and move on. You probably thought your room was humid. You probably thought it was dew. But here's the thing, condensation forms on the outside of a leaf. These droplets are coming from inside the plant. They're being pushed out through microscopic pores at the very tips of the leaves called hydothodes. And your Monstera is doing this on purpose. This process is called guttation. It's not sweating, it's not leaking. It's a deliberate pressurized release of fluid from deep inside the plant's vascular system, and it almost exclusively happens at night when the stomata, the tiny breathing pores on the underside of the leaf, are closed and water can't escape the normal way. Think about that for a second. Your Monstera has an entire secondary system, one most people don't even know exists, that activates only in the dark, and it runs whether you're watching or not. And here's where it gets more interesting. Researchers at the Missouri Botanical Garden and in plant physiology journals going back to the 1960s have documented that guttation fluid isn't just water. It contains sugars, minerals, amino acids, and trace compounds from inside the plant's xylem. Every droplet is a chemical sample of what's happening inside your Monstera right now. And later in this video, I'll tell you what it means when those droplets suddenly stop appearing, because that silence is almost always the first sign something is deeply wrong. Most owners don't catch it until it's too late. Two, your Monstera is leaving you a chemical fingerprint every single night. Ever wonder why some nights there are lots of droplets and some nights there are none? That pattern isn't random, it's data. A 2020 study published in the journal Plants analyzed guttation fluid across multiple tropical species and found something remarkable. The composition of those droplets shifts based on the plant's nitrogen levels, its root oxygen availability, the pH of the soil, and whether the plant is under stress. In other words, if you could read the droplets, you could read the plant. Scientists literally use guttation samples in research labs to measure plant health without cutting the plant open. The fluid is that informative, yeah? So when you see a heavy droplet hanging from a leaf tip, that's your Monstera telling you its roots pulled up more water than needed to use. When you see cloudy or milky droplets, that's excess mineral buildup, often a sign you've been over fertilizing. When you see no droplets at all on a plant that used to produce them, that's a warning, and we'll come back to that. That's not just a plant releasing water, that's a plant delivering a status update on a biological level most owners never realize is happening right in front of them. And hey, if this is changing how you see your Monstera, hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel reach more plant parents who actually want to understand what their plants are telling them instead of just guessing. 3. If your Monstera couldn't do this, it would destroy itself from the inside. Here's something most people don't realize. At night, your Monstera's roots don't stop working. They keep absorbing water from the soil steadily for hours. But the leaves, the normal exit for that water, are closed up tight. The stomata shut when the sun goes down. So what happens to all that water the roots are still pulling up? Pressure, enormous internal pressure. It's called root pressure. And in a plant the size of a mature Monstera, it can build to levels high enough to rupture cells if there's no release. Plant physiology research from Oregon State University and other universities has shown that root pressure in tropical broadleaf plants can exceed 100 kilopascals overnight. That's more than the pressure inside a car tire building up inside the delicate veins of your plant. Guttation is the release valve. The hydatodes at the leaf tips open just enough to let the excess fluid out, drop by drop through the night. It's the plant's way of keeping itself from exploding under the weight of its own success. Think about what that actually means. Every drop you've been wiping off your table in the morning was your Monstera surviving, holding itself together, letting out just enough to stay alive, and most people never even realize that's what they're cleaning up. Four, and here's where it gets genuinely wild, your Monstera isn't doing this because it's a house plant. It's doing this because 300 million years of evolution told it to. Let's take a step back for a second. In the wild, Monsteras don't live in pots. They live in the understory of Central and South American rainforests, climbing up tree trunks covered in near constant humidity, rainfall, and dense canopy moisture. In that environment, water isn't scarce, it's overwhelming. The soil is saturated, the air is saturated. The roots are constantly pulling up more water than the plant can possibly use. So, over hundreds of millions of years, tropical plants developed guttation as a survival mechanism for an environment where too much water was the real threat. Your monstera sitting in a ceramic pot in your living room is still running that ancient rainforest program. Every single night, it doesn't know it's in an apartment in the city. It doesn't know the humidity is 40% instead of 95%. It's still performing the same nightly ritual its ancestors performed on the forest floor of prehistoric jungles. That's not just a plant dripping water. That's a living fossil running an instinct older than mammals. And here's what most people miss. When your Monstera guttates, it's not adapting to your home. It's remembering where it came from. 5. Your Monstera's guttation is an early warning system, and most owners don't read it. Ever notice droplets that are yellowish, milky, or leave a crusty white residue on the leaf tip after they dry? That's not normal guttation. That's your Monstera telling you there's too much salt and mineral buildup in its soil, usually from tap water or over fertilized. The plant is trying to flush the excess out through the only exit it has. Now, here's where it gets more. Research on tropical plant stress responses has shown that guttation composition changes measurably before any visible symptoms appear on the leaf, before yellowing, before browning, before the droplet. So if you suddenly see residue where there wasn't any before, your Monstera is sending a signal of a problem. Most owners wait for the leaf before they act. By then, the root system has already been under stress for a long time. And if you think that's powerful, wait until we get to number 6, because the droplets have one more to tell you, and it's the one most people miss entirely. 6. The silence is the warning. Remember earlier when I said the most important signal is when the droplets suddenly stop? This is what I was talking about. A healthy, well-watered Monstera in reasonable humidity will guttate regularly. Maybe not every night, but often enough that you see drop several times a week if you're paying attention. That rhythm is the sound of a plant doing well. The pressure system is working, the roots are pulling up water, the hydatodes are functioning, the plant is alive and in conversation with its environment. But when that stops, when days go by and you haven't seen a single droplet, it means one of three things. The roots aren't pulling up water anymore, usually because they're rotting. The soil is so dry the plant has nothing to release, or the plant has entered a conservation state where it's shutting down non-essential systems to survive. All three are bad, and all three happen in silence. Think about that for a second. Your Monstera has been leaving you a letter every night. A tiny pressurized chemical letter dripped from the tips of its leaves, telling you it's okay, telling you it's working, telling you it's still here. And the night the letter stops coming is the night it needs you the most. That's not just a plant being dry. That's a plant that has stopped reaching out. And if you weren't paying attention to the droplets they were there, you won't notice the silence when they're gone. Because those droplets on your Monstera's leaves, they were never just water. They were a signal, a pressure release, a chemical letter, a 300 million year old instinct your plant has been performing every night in a dark living room for an audience that was never really watching. So tonight, before you go to bed, take a look. And tomorrow morning, before you wipe anything away, just notice, because your Monstera has been writing to you this whole time. You just have to learn how to read.